Maybe now they'll get some respect, or maybe they'll have to win the next one to get some respect. We talked Florida LSU coming off the big win over the Tigers of Auburn. We got David Waters on the line from Gators Breakdown. This, of course, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. David, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, Mark. Just ready for the second big game in a row for these Gators.
Absolutely. A lot of people didn't give you a chance last weekend, even at home, even though Auburn's got a freshman quarterback and they're a really good team and they played a really good defensive front against the likes of Oregon and Texas A&M, and maybe they were a little bit more battle tested to a certain extent, or maybe looked a little more impressive in those battles than Florida and just kind of squeaking by Miami and Kentucky in particular. But I certainly wasn't surprised. I may have been surprised by Florida winning as comfortably as they did. It didn't come down to the last few minutes. Auburn had a couple drives there with about 10 minutes left where you get the feeling if they would have scored there, then something would have happened. But, of course, LaMichael Pirine put that coffin corner kick and the field position game to waste when he went 88, and that pretty much wrapped it up.
Yeah, Mark, like I said, I think I said this when we came on last week, it was a lot like these Gators from last year. People kind of counting them out, and they get a big game coming up, and they show up in that big game. And yeah, I mean, you go into that Auburn game, and Auburn, of course, was coming off that big win versus Mississippi State, and I really think that clouded a lot of people's judgment and kind of. And looking at the preview for the Florida Auburn game, and kind of overlooking Florida's defense because of the way Auburn's defense was playing and the way Bo Nix had played the best game of his career at Mississippi State, and they're traveling on the road to be able to do that in the swamp, and that atmosphere, that crowd, being amongst the fans that day in the swamp, that really made a difference in this game. And Florida defense showed up once again, and just kind of. Now, after this Auburn game, this Florida defense is legit. It's real. All the sacks, all the turnovers that they're coming up with is not a mirage there. This Gators defense has been doing it all year. But they do have a stiff test coming up this week versus LSU. But they've passed, what they were supposed to do with the backup quarterback, a struggling run game. The defense is helping create turnovers, giving this offense more chances to score, making up for the offense's turnovers as well along the way. So it doesn't look perfect. It isn't pretty all the time, but the Gators are getting it done.
And if you would have told me that Florida goes for a fake punt midfield and doesn't convert, they have two strip sacks in which the ball, the defender, I think it was Derek Brown, both times goes like 50, 60 yards, could have scored a pick, a strip sack 6, didn't on either occasion, and their defense held up on the other end of the field. But you get those kind of plays going against you against a team that's ranked in the top 10 in the country. You usually don't come out of there with an 11-point win in those situations.
Mark, there were 8 total turnovers in the game, and only 13 points off of turnovers. So that's unreal. Auburn only scored 6 points. Florida scored a touchdown off 4 turnovers apiece for each school. So you're right. Yeah, you don't really see that all too often. When you see a lot of turnovers, you usually see a lot of points, but wasn't necessarily happening because these defenses are so good. I mean, Florida led, from the get-go. They were wire to wire in this game. They scored on the second play of their offensive possession after forcing Auburn to go 3 and out there. And but don't get me wrong, as I just mentioned, both teams had turnovers, but if Florida plays a little clean game, if Kyle Trask is protected a little better, if his internal clock, that's going to come with experience. That's one big thing that's missing with him missing so many games and not starting so many games in his career is little things like the pocket and the clock in the pocket. Those things are going to come with more experience. That's what he's missing right now. But when he's given time, I mean, this Gator offense is really clicking. As far as the passing game going, the running game still needs some work. But, Kyle Trask is really picking up the slack for when this run game's not showing when he can get the ball off.
David Waters joining us from Gators Breakdown, Florida LSU, huge game in Death Valley this weekend. I got to ask you, David, considering the situation and what we saw last weekend, does LSU have any cast-offs that they threw Florida's way that we might need to look out for that could burn LSU like LaMichael Pirine did against Auburn last week?
It happened last year, Mark. Brad Stewart. They didn't want to. They did not really recruit Brad Stewart all that hard. They let him go to Florida, and Brad Stewart picks off Joe Burrow for his first interception of the season for a pick six that kind of leads Florida the way of upsetting LSU last year. So I'm sure Brad Stewart would love nothing better than to do it in Louisiana, in his home state of Louisiana, and pay back LSU 2 years in a row there. So, yeah, the Michael Pirine run. And look, we talked to him about at SEC Media Days about that. And it's kind of funny that it reared its head in the Florida Auburn game because he talked about it at SEC Media Day. Hey, look, they told me I was too slow. I came to Florida. Nick Saban offered me late Alabama. I had already committed to Florida. I was going to Florida. And he made Auburn pay in the end.
And it wasn't a deal where I was told I was too slow and I came back and hit you for 25 carries for 120 and hit you for a lot of 8-yard runs and 10-yard runs. No, bam, 88 to the house and nobody could catch him. It's just apropos. It's good stuff. LSU, Florida coming up in Death Valley. Of course, they play each and every year. It's one of the great series in the SEC. So, David, I know you weren't surprised by the outcome against Auburn. A lot of people were. Auburn a favorite on the road against the top 10 team. That doesn't necessarily add up, but they gained a lot of respect from Vegas. But I know you weren't surprised by the outcome. I think you picked Florida to win the game, but is there an aspect of the game or a particular player that you came away from the game thinking, yeah, we might be a little bit better than I thought, or we might be a little bit better in this aspect of the game or that aspect of the game than I really thought against this kind of team?
The defense, I think, was about where I thought they'd be. Mark, I'll go a little different, and I'll go backup quarterback in Emory Jones. When Kyle Trask went down, he led Florida to a field goal drive. It was a fast turnaround. Kyle Trask goes down. He has to come in, and hey, it wasn't just with his legs either. I think he completed 3 passes on the drive to march Florida down and get 3 points. And in a close game like that game was, that field goal was important. Auburn was driving late in the game, and that would have been a 1-possession game where they could have, maybe tied it up and taken the game into overtime or whatever. But that, being up by 11 points, made a difference there. And 3 of that was an Emory Jones-led drive against, a very good Auburn defense. So, and it was done with his arm. It wasn't just let's play conservative, let's play safe because he's a young quarterback. He doesn't have a lot of experience. They put him in there and they let him throw the ball.
Yeah, he impressed me. They gave him throws that he could succeed on. They were throwing between the hashes, but man, he was throwing tight spirals. He was throwing darts. He was throwing on time. Yeah, he looked really good. I think he went 5 for 7.
Yeah, and on that, 5 for 7 on that. And on that note, I really do think we'll see him in against LSU a bit more. You go back to this Auburn game, you go back to all the rest of the season before that, and Florida's struggling running the ball. But when Emory Jones is out there, they have to account for that. Defenses have to account for that, and they have to account for his legs. But now with tape, they have to account for his arm as well. And I really think that he can help get this run game going because Florida's best any team on the road, but especially when you're playing a high flying offense like we see from LSU. The thing is, you want to keep that offense on the sideline. So Florida's easiest path to victory would be to get the run game going, would be to keep that LSU offense on the sideline. And I really think Emory Jones is integral and can be in the plan for that to happen. So I do expect to see him a bit more than what we've seen so far this year.
David, off the top, you hit on the one clue we should have picked up on, and maybe you did, but some of us dummies like me in picking Auburn didn't, and that's that Bo Nix is a really talented player. He's a gamer. He's got a lot of heart. He lays it on the line. I think he's going to be a really good quarterback, but right now He's just too inconsistent. He showed us that against Oregon. He had a hot final 3 minutes, but basically he didn't have that great of a game against Oregon. Texas A&M, they really leaned on the defense in the running game. Sure, he made some plays. It was that Mississippi State game that he balled out with 335 yards, and that Mississippi State defense lost some NFL players. I don't know that they're as good as they were anywhere close to it last year, but Joe Burrow and that LSU group, that's a different deal.
It is a different deal. I think what Todd Grantham saw, I think, in Bo Nix, kind of what you explained there, because he didn't blitz Bo Nix a lot. He didn't have to, for one, because Florida was getting pressure with 3 and 4. But I also think that was the game plan, and drop guys into coverage, make him fit it into tight windows with dropping so many guys into coverage, because they knew he really couldn't. They knew he was inconsistent. They knew he was inconsistent throwing the ball, and it showed. He missed 2 open touchdown passes there, and one where he did connect with the deep receiver, but the receiver had to fell down because he had a stretch for the ball, and then another one where the slant was open in the end zone. He misses that. Next play, interception. So, I mean, I think Florida saw on tape that he was inconsistent. That's not what they're going to see with Joe Burrow Saturday night, hitting almost 80% of his passes. He's actually throwing the ball well under pressure as well. I don't think he's seen any pressure like he's going to see Saturday night from this Florida defense, but against the teams he's faced so far, and I'll mention too the teams he's faced so far, Georgia Southern has the best pass rank yards per game defense that LSU has played so far this year, and it ranks 103rd. So that's something to look forward to. But here's the thing: they're doing what they're supposed to do against that type of competition. What they're supposed to do against a pass defense that really can't stop the pass. So Joe Burrow has been accurate, giving the ball to those great LSU receivers that's out there that go 3-4 deep there. So I mean, yeah, Burrow's accurate. He's shown it this year. He's much better quarterback than he was last year, and I'll still say he hasn't seen anything or faced any type of pressure like he's going to see Saturday night with this Gator defense coming into Baton Rouge.
I expected the spread to be over a touchdown, but not quite at 13. I don't know what it's done this week, but
it went down to 12 and a half, I know, at one point, but I think it back up to 13 and a half.
Okay. Seems a little fat for me, but certainly in these kind of games with those kind of offenses, meaning the LSU, it could be a tremendous game. It could be 24-all until 5 minutes left, and they tack on 2 touchdowns and win by 14. So you never know on a point spread what craziness happens in the last few weeks, few minutes of the ball game. But it seems a bit much for me. Anything we've missed on this one, Dave?
I just can't wait to see the Florida defensive back, C.J. Henderson, Marco Wilson, Trey Dean, and to go against, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Terrace Marshall probably won't play for LSU, but look, I mean, they'll just go and throw in Derek Dillon there to kind of make up for him. So, this Florida secondary versus these LSU receivers, and that Florida pass rush versus Joe Burrow. I mean, this is probably an NFL scout's dream right now. I was watching that offense versus this defense and seeing what comes out of that. And also, Mark, just kind of go back to the other side and the Florida offense. How does Kyle Trask and/or Emory Jones handle that atmosphere? Kyle Trask, he's done everything right that he's been asked of so far. He's come in a late game situation on the road at Kentucky, led Florida to a victory. Made his first start against Tennessee, led Florida to a victory. Led the way most of the way against a big-time defense in Auburn last week. But, this is a different test when you have to go to Baton Rouge, that crazy crowd, that loud crowd, and a night game at that. So I want to see how him and Emory Jones handled that situation.
And the title of DBU is also on the line when these
there we go. Always. I mean, I can't forget about your Buckeyes there as well on that one. But when these two teams get together, Marty, not only DBU, these two teams and fan bases just do not like each other. This is in a lot of fans' eyes replaced Florida, Tennessee. It's now Georgia, FSU, and then LSU, or FSU, Georgia, LSU. The LSU is pretty much pegged third now as far as rivalries go for some Gator fans, because they don't play Auburn enough anymore, don't play Miami enough anymore, and Tennessee is kind of fallen by the wayside. But when these two teams started matching up in the mid-2000s all the way up to now, it's gotten nasty. You've had teams talking about hurricanes and and dodging each other and playing. I mean, it's been intense for the last 3-4 years, and most of it kind of started in the mid 2000s. But these fan bases, these players don't really care for each other too much.
Yeah, it's been one of the great series in the SEC. And again, when I see these two teams and see the two names and know that they're going to meet, I just automatically think NFL, and I think athletes. They're going to be all over the place, and it should be fun to watch from Death Valley. You got to check out David Waters from Gators Breakdown on any of the audio platforms or right here on YouTube as well. David, enjoy the game.
Thanks, Mark.